Hello, hello, hello. I am author and entrepreneur, the Cerebral Palsy Vigilante, Zachary Fennell. And as you can tell looking at your screen, I'm here today with a guest. Please welcome fitness enthusiast who also happens to have cerebral palsy, Daryl Perry.
Zach, glad to be back. Glad we're doing this. One of many projects.
Me too, me too. For longtime viewers of the channel, you may remember Daryl from some past videos. You can find those, but let's focus on today. And today, the subject that we decided we thought would be good to talk about is aging with cerebral palsy. There seems to be a real demand for insight about aging with cerebral palsy. I have shared over the years my aging process and how things I have found, you know, just how everything has impacted me with growing older, and then how cerebral palsy factors into that.
Mhm.
And of course, I'm only one person, so I thought, you know what? Let's have Daryl on. Especially as someone who's a fitness enthusiast, stays active. He would have some good insights about aging with cerebral palsy. And let's start with the basics for
Mhm.
somebody. We mentioned you have cerebral palsy, Daryl,
Mhm.
but first off, aging. So, how old are you? That will help give a point of
I'm
view. And then, so
I'm
how old are
definitely
you? And then, how
I'm
does
definitely
your
aging.
cerebral?
I'm definitely aging. I turned 43 about a month ago.
All right.
So yes, I'm definitely aging. And I think what I've found is that once I started to get into my 30s, the whole thing of like knowing that I have limitations, but still throwing my body at pretty much whatever I wanted to do because I'll wake up tomorrow or the next day and I'll be able to get back to it. That stuff started to really change. So I started to realize once I was in my 30s that like I had to start to really kind of take care of myself a little bit better than maybe what I was previously. But yes, I'm aging gracefully, I'll say, into my 40s with CP.
All right. So for you there. And then, just in general, before you even talk about more in depth about the changes you've noticed as you age, just in general, how has cerebral palsy impacted your body movement?
So that's a great question, and basically the way that I like to describe it is my body is very affected. I would say if I was, I like to say 75 to 80%. So like if I was to stand up and to divide my body into four quadrants, everything except that section that my right upper torso and arm is in, I would say is noticeably impacted. And then my lower body, especially my lower half, is very noticeable. So CP has definitely it's presented quite a few challenges for me as far as how my body moves and what I'm able to do. I think like what many of us do. I have kind of figured this out as I've gone along. There's been some really good there's some good things about that, and probably some other things that I've been a little too stubborn on. But yeah, it's definitely impacted me.
Seeing your gait from your different videos and shorts that you share on Instagram.
If you have trouble staying focused on the present, this is for you. I want to share with you one of my favorite all time quotes, and it is today's coffee cup message. I'm too young to rush, but too old to waste time. This reminds us how fast time truly does move, but also, hopefully, how much time we each have.
And everything. There is a certain, I do see a similarity to the way I walk as well. And I know one of the issues I deal with is, calluses on my feet. Is that something you've dealt with, or how has the way you walk kind of impacted your body over time?
So calluses definitely. I use a moisturizing lotion every night now, trying to get that skin as soft as I can. Um, Bunions, that started on my right foot, and the way that I always understood that growing up, it was because with the way that my gait is, I was more of my compensating was done on my right side because even though the right side is affected in my lower half, it's quite a bit stronger or it picks up the slack from my left side. So it was like, well, hey, you're carrying the weight for both sides, so it makes sense that you would have this bunion develop on your right foot. And then as I got older, probably into my 30s, I noticed that I started to have the same thing happen on my left side. So that was a problem. I have absolutely zero arch in either of my feet. So I have completely flat feet. And then yeah, just like from when we're talking about my movement patterns and stuff, all kinds of joint issues. I've really had to work in the last year or so to strengthen my ankles outside of just doing kind of the standard ankle, Achilles, heel cord stretch, whatever you want to call it, on like steps. I hadn't really worked to strengthen my ankles, but then I had an overuse injury, which is part of kind of what happens. I know that happens for most people anyway, but I feel like with CP, those things kind of flare up. When they flare up, they really can be pronounced. And I was put in a walking boot, and the orthopedic wanted me to be in the boot for pretty much every step. And as I was trying to take these steps, like my ankle could not handle it. So I had to really work on strengthening my ankle while I mean, and doing these exercises when my foot was out of the boot. So I mean, it's definitely my gait has caused a lot of challenges. I would say at this point in my life, though, I'm learning how to kind of work within it in day to day life. And this is crazy because I didn't really start doing this until this past summer. We went to the zoo with Heather, my girlfriend, and her family, and we were there. It was like 90 something degree heat, and we were there for like 3 or 4 hours. And what I was doing is I would sit down pretty much like every chance I could get, like even if it was just for 30 seconds or a minute, I would just sit down. And I found at the end of the day, I wasn't all that exhausted. Now, throughout my life, and that's with the heat and the humidity, and like throughout my life, I never wanted to take breaks. I always wanted to be standing. I didn't want accommodations. So I would push myself, and then I'd be in a lot of pain halfway through. I'd be sweating. That's a big thing for me with CP is like if I'm up and I'm moving and I'm standing, or if I'm moving around, like I sweat a ton. So but actually just going like from place to place, short distances, sit down, short distance, sit down. I was actually able to do a lot more, and I was really happy with that.
And there wasn't any, and this kind of goes into mindset, which plays a factor into aging. 'Cause your attitude you take will kind of uh, affect how you end up viewing things. When you were sitting down and taking those breaks, did you feel worried that you might be holding up Heather? Did you feel like, oh, I'm kind of a burden that we have to sit and down and do this? Or what was your mindset to kind of be like, to to be able to be okay, be like, this is what I need to do to maintain my endurance and not worry about what the people you were with were thinking?
So this is a really good question because I think, and I've heard from other folks that have CP, part of how I was diagnosed is I was missing benchmarks of talking and crawling and all that when I was a little kid. And I was told that as I was growing up. So I always had this fear of being behind, of slowing people up, of doing different, like of just being something that was like holding others back, or I wasn't doing things fast enough or anything like that. And that really that was something growing up and into young adulthood that was not even just in health and fitness, just in my life. I felt like I always had this thought that am I behind? Like I am I ever going to catch up? And then gradually over the course of working through some things, at the time it was self development type stuff. Later on, it was therapy. I was able to have um, develop a mindset that's more around a deliberate, slow, deliberate pace, which actually kind of helps me to stay present as I go through life. We haven't talked about it as much here, but that's kind of with me as far as what I do in entrepreneurship. I do work as a fitness coach and personal trainer. I've been certified in that stuff for about 15 years, 14 years, but I've worked in the industry. My first job in the fitness industry was 20 years ago. And then I started to really become fascinated with kind of this inside out approach. So a lot of the stuff that I put out in content, you mentioned some of the reels and stuff I put out, but podcast, website content, everything is about this whole like this mindset and this thought process. And I can say, even though I have daily things that I practice to kind of keep my headspace where I want it, I still say that I give myself grace to where I want to be in this thought process 85% of the time, because there's still going to be times like in the moment was my voice like, oh my gosh, you're holding people up. The kids really want to go to like the insect house and you're over here doing this, you're sitting here like you have to almost step I have to almost step outside myself and say, hey, you're here to enjoy it. Nobody's like in a hurry. So I am able to like kind of refocus myself. But yeah, that insecurity, even when you have all the strategies and techniques, I think those thoughts still come up, and I still do deal with those on a regular basis, if I'm honest about it.
Yeah, I think what's key for everyone out there too, and it's easy to say when you have those people in your life, but you have to have the right people in your life, because the right people aren't going to see you needing to sit down for 30 seconds or whatever, needing to hold a hand. And I'm talking about my experiences,
Yeah.
like walking through a park that is very uh, off kilter without a smooth pavement.
Mhm.
The right people are going to be like happy to lend that hand, happy to stop and meet you where you can, where you can be. So a big part of that is finding the right people in your life, and not in the same fashion as socially finding the right people in your life, but the right people in your life. You mentioned an orthopedic
Mhm.
earlier. As far
Mhm.
as aging with cerebral palsy, what, from a medical standpoint, as much as you're comfortable sharing, what have been? Do you have a physical Do you have your own physical therapist that you go to? Do you take care of yourself like just on your own? What's kind of that? What's from a year basis, like what kind of medical professionals are you seeing?
Yeah, yeah. So we'll go backwards and work forwards because it actually all ties in. So like most of us, I think I worked with a team of medical professionals growing up, and I'm talking doctors, physical therapists, occupational therapists, um, and it seemed like every couple of years I'd be going to a different office for different things. And I was put with an orthopedic when I was a teenager, who he introduced me to exercise, strength training, especially, and the way that he introduced it, I actually really enjoyed it. So he started me with this when I was again probably 13 or so years old, um, and that was very enjoyable. And then he also, I this is kind of where I think my initial curiosity around things with health and fitness, and I think that's a big thing for anybody when it comes to exercise, because there's so many different ways of doing things. And even for those of us that have CP, like, 'cause I think we're some of the best at modifying exercise and activity, but he was always willing to like discuss and try different things, and one of which was I was getting Botox injections and the tighter muscles in my legs to kind of deaden the muscle for 3 months with the idea that we would be able to go in and strengthen what is normally a really weak muscle because the opposing super strong muscle is weakened, so we can kind of balance some things out. Um, and so we were always kind of trying some things. We did a few rounds of that. And this was kind of early on. Um, I think with the whole Botox treatment things, it was being used for. There was a few different fringe things, but that was something he was talking about when it comes to physical therapy. Or yeah, well, he was talking about working with the orthopedic, and then the physical therapist in his office. I probably had anywhere between 6 and 10, somewhere between 6 and 10 physical therapists throughout my life. I can't remember all of them, and most of them were up through the age of 18. And the one that worked in his office is actually one when I got an injury. I tracked her down. She still works at one of the local um, PT offices here, and I got referred out to go meet with her. So she and I were doing some work where I would come in once a month and just would kind of do. We had the initial benchmarks and then assessments. So I still the orthopedic. Um, I no longer see an orthopedic. I haven't seen the physical therapist in about a year or so, but I basically day to day I kind of have my own program that I do that goes into flexibility, that goes into mobility, and then if I need to get to the point where I need benchmarks and assessments, I would go see her again. But I think therapy and orthopedics laid a really solid foundation for me in a number of different ways. I think the biggest thing was getting me curious about activity and like trying to figure out how I could make it work. Um, but like at this point in my life, most of it is just what I do on my own.
Interesting, because I do feel that seems to be a common issue once you turn 18 in cerebral palsy. There's that just that drop off of it's hard to find those services to help you out. What I do to take care of myself, physically, and to keep aging as strong as to keep as strong as possible, aging with CP
Yeah.
is a same thing. It's these. I had the private physical therapist who actually continue to see slowly, into college at least once a month, going from weekly to once a month. But the exercises I learned from her are still the core to what I do today to keep me active and as strong. I honestly feel at 30, I'm 37, be turning 38 in April, and so in my in my late 30s, I feel I'm in better shape than I was in my early 20s. And I used to joke with friends and say like, oh, I'm 20, and I'm 20 some year old, but I feel like I'm 80. And now I don't have that feeling anymore. A lot of it has been exercise for me, doing that stuff on my own. I
Hmm.
know I'm also fortunate because there are some people out there who don't have the ability to exercise independently. They would need some further assistance to be able to do that. But there's got to be at least one thing, even if it's fine motor skills. Like, yeah, okay, have your movements in one hand. There's got to be something you can do on a daily basis or weekly basis to strengthen those fine motor skills. For you, you've mentioned the moisturizer, I believe it was, for the calluses. You're
Hmm.
doing your regular exercise. So regular exercise, does that look like? For me, it's like about twice a week, ideally once a week at the very least. What does that look like for you? And then also for me, like daily stretching. But to get into the more practical elements of it, it's easy to
Yeah.
say, oh, exercise regularly. What does that look like? How often are you
Sure. Sure.
exercising?
So one thing that I do want to touch on, and you mentioned it, and I want to go deeper on this because like there are a lot of people out there that are hearing this that they may not be able to do what they consider a workout, but I know um, every little bit helps. You don't have to even be able to stand or even to sit up. You can do things from bed. You can do things on the floor. I will say I saw an exercise one day that was talking about doing these Superman things where you lay on your stomach and then you raise your torso up and then you raise the back up. And really, what this is doing is working your spine from all the way, from top to bottom. And I hadn't done this in a while, and because I do so much work seated, um, I couldn't do the back half of it. So what I did was I put my arms down to the side. First couple days, like I could barely get anything of this movement, and then eventually I started to be able to lift up my lower half. Then I was able to do the original movement a few days after that. And one thing that I'll say is that if you're doing some sort of therapy movement and it's something that maybe you were able, even if it was something you were able to do in the past and you can't do it right now, the smallest increase in range of motion is major progress. And then the next time you come back to do it, you may be able to just, I mean, you will be amazed how fast your body bounces back. Now, that's actually what got me when I first started stretching again. Heather, who grew up in dance, it was very flexible and did this stuff her entire life. When we first met, I was I was not consistent with stretching. I had a couple mobility exercises that I would do, but how I start my day now is as soon as my alarm goes off at 5 a.m. I turn my Apple Watch into workout mode, and I have a 15-minute stretching routine that I do. And so I do that. That's how I start the day. I lift, and I alternate between doing an upper body lift and a lower body lift at the gym I go to. And I will do those either 4 days a week or 6 days a week, depending on how much time. And this is one thing where I'll go through and I'll do a series of the upper body exercises are basically um, they take me about 30 minutes. I'll go from one machine. I'll do a light set, a medium set, and a heavyweight set. And I'll move to the next one, light, medium, heavy. And then I've got about 6 or 7 exercises I do. And depending on crowds, it usually only takes me about 30 minutes to do that. And then I do like to try to do cardio, but I like to space my workouts out for that. And since a lot of the work I do is in front of a screen, I like to go in the afternoon and I try to get a second cardio workout in. And when I do that, I'm trying to do a variety of things. So I'll try to do like kind of these things on rotation. So I'll do 3 minutes on a stair climber, 1 minute on with the battle ropes, the ropes that you kind of do some slams with, which is actually a really good exercise for hand grip, for grip strength. And my left side, my grip isn't nearly as strong as I'd like it to be. But again, this is something once I started doing this, I was able to notice an increase pretty quickly. I work in a rowing machine, and this has been a good thing for me to do, just going from exercise to exercise. And there's some other ones too, but because I used to just get on the stair climber and I would turn it up to a certain level and I would go in that one motion for 1 to 3 minutes, take a break for like 30 to 40 seconds, go back and do another minute to 3 minutes, however long. And I got really like from a cardiovascular standpoint, it was good, but I'm only doing this one movement. So I try to do some different things there. But all total, lifting 4 to 6 days a week, cardio probably 5 to 7 days a week. So I'm doing that stuff regularly, and then I try to spend some time outdoors. Whether if the weather's nice outside, I'll go for very short walks. I have a little bit of a loop that I hit around my place that's pretty short. Like I think 2 laps is about a third of a mile, so I'll go out and do a lap or two a couple times a day. But if even if the weather is like not really great for walking. I'll still go out and sit on my deck for a while and just try to sit outside and get some sunlight, I guess.
Sometimes it's just, well, yeah, sunlight, vitamin D, and then just in general, that fresh air. It's just, there's something about it that's like, breathing that is nice as well. With, because so you've mentioned that you're in, like, when you started noticing more injuries
Mhm.
into your early 30s, correct? And then what kind of specific injuries have you dealt with, and how have they changed your approach to, have they made an impact and a difference to the way you do things daily now?
Yes. So I would say for about the last year and a half, I've had this. I mentioned the plantar fascia stuff that also caused some issues into my ankles, and what this has caused me to do is change the way that I train. That's why I go through and do those quick workouts with the weight training. That's why I've upped the cardio. Is I'm redistributing my weight because I'm got a very strong upper body, got a very large upper body, but it's at the point where it's nice to have the muscle mass. However, that weight is not helping my joints at all. So I'm in the process of trying to keep my strength, but take the weight off of my joints as best I can. Now, on the day to day, the stretching is something that's really changed into my 40s. I also have um, I also have icing and mobility stuff that I do more of. I will spend some time in a splint, just keeping my foot flexed. I spend, I would say, between icing and such, between the time I wake up and the end of the day, I probably spend close to 45 minutes to an hour just treating my foot in a way. And I think even once this injury is completely healed, I'm still probably going to be doing that to some level each day. And that's also, again, that'll be sometimes I'll be sitting out on my deck with an ice pack on my ankle because that's part of the treatment that I do. Um, and just, yeah, I think I'm more focused on longevity. Again, I used to do stuff where I would kind of throw myself at an activity. I threw myself at a 10K. I'm not going to say that I didn't train for it. I did do a few 5Ks and worked my way up to it. Um, but whereas I used to just the post workout was more or less a victory pizza and hanging out with people. Now it's soaking and stretching and taking care of myself a little bit differently. So yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like once I started to hit my 40s, I was like, okay, I want to be able to do this stuff for decades. So there's going to have to be a lot more, I guess, functional type things and injury rehab and preventative type stuff that I do. So that's kind of what it's all led to.
So it sounds like the longevity focus is what allows you to look at these extra things that you didn't have to do when you were younger,
Mhm.
and be like, okay, it's okay that I'm doing it, and not just grow tired and frustrated that, oh, I have to do more, but rather just be like, you know what, this is what I need to do to live my best life.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's exactly it.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to people watching to about aging with cerebral palsy, about what they whether, yeah, how just handling the just aging with cerebral palsy and how to handle it.
Well, I would definitely lean on a combination of your experience growing up, your individual experience, because that's going to play a key. If you still have access to therapists, orthopedics, especially the ones that you had really good working relationships with, I would definitely lean with them. If you know your body well and you know where the limitations are, you know where and when to push, which is a tricky thing because as I'm telling you, I'm still dealing with some stuff that I'm working through injury wise myself. Um, you definitely trust your experience and your know how, but if you have some people that you work with that have been a very positive influence on your active lifestyle, do it. And I will also say, there are some fitness professionals, some personal trainers, some strength coaches that you might be able to find some that are specialized in doing adaptive or corrective work. I think that's a huge thing. So, and I think if there's anybody that you work with that's new, I think just kind of letting them know honestly, like what your limitations are, seeing how they can work with you. And then, and this again is for anybody, if you're working with a fitness professional, if for some reason you just don't feel comfortable, like you've been going to them, you feel like they're knowledgeable, but it's just not working for you, certainly advocate for yourself. That's something I think throughout the process you've got to do, whether you're working with a fitness professional, a medical professional, really tell them where you are and what you need. Because I think with CP, cases are all going to be a little bit different. But even if we look similar, if you and someone else look similar in your body and your movement patterns, doesn't mean that your function is going to be exactly the same. So it's going to be an experience that is unique to you. Um, Again, I was fortunate enough to have kind of this curiosity put into me by the orthopedic I was working with. I kind of look at it like a puzzle. So I'm trying to figure out what's the best way for me to kind of do this activity, this movement. What kind of adaptations do I need to make? But really, if you're heading into your late 30s or into your 40s and you've been active, you have a lifetime of experience that's going to serve you well as you figure out how to do this stuff and really adapt as you go through life.
I really like that mindset of the puzzle. It's a great way to approach it. And there are so many things from just what you just said now, from what you've said earlier that I could still ask you about, but I don't want to make this video too long. So, yeah, I'll just leave it for now. Is there anything else that we haven't discussed today that you feel would be important on the subject of aging with cerebral palsy to bring up before we close out?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything. I think being your own advocate is huge. I think one thing that I wanted to mention, you said having the right kind of people around you, and even if you need to hold a hand or hold on to somebody, I'm somebody where, again, I've got a lot of upper body strength and throughout life because my balance has been so bad. I will use counters and desks and basically the environment around me to kind of catch myself, and sometimes that has had to have been people. So, having the right kind of people around you, and whether it's we're talking personal or professional or is in the medical capacity, is huge. But no, I think we covered everything.
All right, excellent, excellent. Uh, for those of you watching this, if you have any questions about anything in particular, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. Yep, down there. And while you're down there, make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel if you're not already, and make sure that it's kind of like that all notifications is set on the bell so you get notification every time I put out a new video. And until next time, don't blend in, blend out.